Jim Fannon Show. Welcome Twitter, Twitch, D-Live, Facebook, and YouTube. Smash the like button. Share it if you like it. Hit me up on Patreon/free speech. Oh, hang on. Jesse Reed got it in there. Patreon/free speech. Patreon.com/free speech. Yeah, I own that bad boy. And coming up Tuesday, March 30th, right here, 4 p.m. Mayor Jim Diodati in Niagara Falls. It's 4 p.m. EST, 30th of March. And then the next day, Wednesday, March 31st, noon. Matea Murta. We're going to talk about sex selective abortion all over the world. But it actually happens in Canada. But today, you're going to be talking to Marc Emery for an hour. Marc, I appreciate your time, man. I know you're really busy. You see, you're in London, brother? What are you doing up there? Oh, let's take you off. Let's unmute everyone. The producer, can you unmute that? There you go. Okay. The producer is so budget on this show, Marc. I don't know what else to tell you.
You're still having too much fun, though.
How are you, brother? Good to see your face.
I'm good. Speaking of my face, I just arrived here Sunday, and in wonderful Ontario, and Hamilton had the most beautiful day on Monday. So I'm holding a cannabis flag outside my employer's store, selling cannabis and I'm outside from 10 to 3 in the afternoon without a hat. I just got burned terribly badly, more than I've been in maybe a few decades. And people say, well, you're a world traveler, aren't you used to sun? And I said, yeah, but equatorial sun in Colombia is a lot milder and gentler than a temperate. The further north you go, the harsher it is. If I was in the Arctic, I'd probably be peeling several layers if I'd have been out 5 hours in a row without a hat under the sun. So after that, I wore a hat, and my problems were solved. We've had such great weather Monday to Thursday, and now where you are, St. Catharines, and where I am in London, it's raining.
Yeah. Well, nothing grows without rain. We need it for the spring, but...
There's truth to that. And all the cannabis growers I'm relying on to supply my brother and I shop. Because the reason I'm in Ontario is my brother and I are opening a cannabis store together in London, Ontario, only a kilometer from where I was born and raised, and where he was born and raised. My brother, Matthew, and only 2 kilometers from where I started my legalization of cannabis campaign 30 years ago at the police station at London, or at Dundas and Highbury, actually. Dundas and Adelaide. And I started giving out High Times magazines and Grow Guides, because they were all banned back then. That was my first real crusade, is to make books and magazines about marijuana legal. And it took me 3 years, but we got that done in 1994.
Wow. Dude, something just came to my mind. Do you know what's up with all the white mildew on the outdoor stuff these days? It seems like everyone's got it, and a lot of people went to seed this year too. Is it people that just don't know what they're doing growing?
Well, when you say this year, no one in Canada is growing in March outside.
Yeah, right.
Anyway.
Last season.
Powdery mildew is much more controllable indoor in a way, because you can control the humidity, you control the lights, you can even have things that destroy mold in your lighting. A lot of things you can do to prevent powdery mildew or molds from forming indoors. Outdoors, if it's cloudy and cool and rainy for just 3 to 4 days, you're going to have powdery mildew.
Really?
Anybody who's got it, I recommend a wonderful organic compound. It's just got 6 nutrients in it. Every ingredient is recognizable. The plants love it. You foliar spray it. It's called Jake's All-in-One. Jake's All-in-One. It's manufactured by a guy on Vancouver Island whose family is probably 3rd generation pot growers. They decided to get into grow products, and it's a wonderful product. Anyway, I grew 96 plants in Prince Edward County, not far from you. Well, it's north. It's on the other side of the lake, Prince Edward County. But they got powdery mildew, even though we had 8 or 9 fans. But with 96 plants in a greenhouse, you need to keep the air moving. Anyway, they got powdery mildew, and I applied Jake's All-in-One and never saw powdery mildew again. And the plants really looked awesome. And all organic. It's all no chemicals. And you can only put stuff on, in my experience, though, when your plants are still in veg. Once you're flowering,
right,
I would just cut off the leaves. I would just get rid of the leaves after that with powdery mildew.
So what have you been up to since the last time we talked? I think it spoke to you a couple of years ago, maybe a year and a half.
Well, once the COVID dictatorship took over in March, I stayed indoors like everyone else for 70 days. I didn't go out except groceries, but even then I had those delivered. I never went outside. All the parks were closed in Toronto anyway. It was kind of a ghost town. But after 70 days, I thought, no, something's all wrong here. This is ridiculous. They told me it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and now we'll never go back to normal until we've totally eradicated COVID and a vaccine's come in. And now over a year later, the dictatorship has just trampled on every charter right. The government's inflated our currency so that in the years ahead, it will be greatly diminished in value. That's the only reason why stocks, amidst the greatest recession ever, are soaring upward. It's why housing prices are soaring upward, even though we have a lot of housing and a lot of people who can't afford it. And so we're seeing the devaluation of our currency. In fact, all worldwide currencies are getting devalued, and fiat currencies anyway, and all commodities are going up relative to cash. In fact, real estate is not going up in value. Money is going down in value. Stocks aren't going up in value. Money is going down in value. So everything else is holding its own while money goes down in value. This is going to be very bad for a lot of ordinary people who live from paycheck to paycheck when they see the cost of everything, food particularly, going up. Anyway, I've been rebellious against the dictatorship ever since May 7th. When I went down to Queen's Park in Toronto, the capital, the Parliament building, held up a sign that said, "Lockdown is over if you want it." I got threw stuff at me. One man came up and punched me. I never have had such a hostile reaction in all my life to any political position I've ever taken. I've easily gotten more people angry with me, threatening me, unfriending me, following me, sending me abuse, call me an asshole, jerk, fuck you, by the thousands when it comes to COVID. Like people, and to anybody who's not corpulently fat, diabetic, or over 90, if you're under 90 and you're not diabetic or fat, you're not going to die. That's just it, right? If you smoke cigarettes, you're probably not going to die. If you smoke pot, you're absolutely not going to die. If you're under 65, you're not going to die. Well, I don't know why everybody's afraid of something that we already have so many diseases more likely to kill you. Number one would be suicide. I know 4 people who've killed themselves in the last year, and I don't know anybody who's died of COVID. Nobody in my social circle, nobody I've ever met died of COVID. No pot smoker I know died of COVID. And so we've literally destroyed the country as far as a free democracy, a flourishing economy, a normal economy. You know, we've had a curfew in Montreal of 8 p.m. for over a month. That's dictatorial stuff, dictatorship stuff, because there are cops waiting everywhere. Any movement on the street, you're under arrest. Anybody leaving their home after 8 o'clock, you're under arrest. This is Soviet Union stuff. And Canadians are just giving their freedom up and giving their charter rights up, giving their economy up because the government's giving free money. Woohoo, free money to not work. Well, geez, even a lot of pot smokers I know think that's great. Can't understand why I'm against that. They call that the ultimate stoner lifestyle. Get free money from the government, watch TV and smoke weed all day. Man, it's a discouraging prospect for our country, especially with the communist Chinese, so anxious to take over so much of the world by stealth or by bribery or by whatever. Our Canadian youth are way too weak and too woke to resist the onslaught that's coming.
Yeah, talk to us a little bit about how you view the handling of legalization. My buddy's in the CBD business, and it's flourishing in the States. Everyone's jumping on CBD. For those that don't know, it's non-psychoactive, doesn't get you high, and it's got all these properties in it, and he's gray market. Only a licensed dealer can sell this stuff.
CBD is legal in every state in the United States because it was never put on the schedule of controlled drugs and substances in the U.S. Because it's non-psychoactive, it was never really prohibited. It is prohibited in Canada except if you're a legal store. So the legal shop my brother and I are forming in London, Emery Brothers Cannabis, will be selling CBD in all sorts of ways, drops and flowers and edibles and beverages. But CBD is great if you've got anxiety, if you've got spasticity problems, But if you've got cancer or some serious disease, you're going to need full spectrum cannabis, meaning all parts of the cannabis plant resin, including THC. So CBD is great for some things, but it has limitations. If you were doing some serious disease control like MS or cancer, I would get full spectrum cannabis, and in very high doses too. There's reasons for that. And the funny thing is, I'm not allowed to tell people when they come into this shop the medical use of cannabis. I can't tell them what it's good for. So if somebody comes up and said, I have MS, what would work best for me? I really can't tell them. I'll have to show them a book or something, get them to read that chapter, and then they can come back to me, because I can't dispense medical advice, right? Which is another one of the many nutty rules. But I get it. You don't want to have charlatans claiming it'll cure your cancer just so they can sell you some weed oil. It does cure cancer sometimes. It will really help you if you're doing chemotherapy. Cannabis really assists well when you're doing chemotherapy. And there are other good things for chemotherapy, though. If you fast 4 days before you do chemotherapy, is the best favor you could do yourself, because cancer feeds on sugars and proteins. And if you can diminish the amount of sugar and protein in your body before you start getting chemotherapy, then the chemotherapy is really effective on a weakened cancer cells throughout your body. You're starving them of food. If you feed them, oddly enough, then they're going to resist that chemotherapy even more. So when people say they lose their appetite, in a kind of a way, that's a good thing. But as many of I cannot have that discussion with someone if they come into my store. There's so many rules I don't like. But that having been said, it's still cool that 30 years after I started the campaign to legalize cannabis, that I have a legal cannabis shop with my brother, only 1 kilometer from where I was born and 2 kilometers from where I started the campaign. So for me, it's all things that are legal are regulated. And as a libertarian, I believe everything's regulated way too much. It's creating expense for the consumer. It's creating unnecessary expense for the business people, the cannabis producers, the retailers. It's probably hired 1,000 bureaucrats since cannabis was legalized. The biggest beneficiaries by far are the federal and provincial governments and their bureaucracies in Health Canada and the provincial health units, because they've hired thousands more people to regulate us, and we have to pay them with our revenues and stuff like that. So I had a more utopian vision of like individual freedom and wonderful, pot people opening their own shops and stuff. But it's become something that only the elite and well-heeled can really afford and pull off. There's a lot of regulation. There's bureaucracy. To open a store, you have to get approved at all 3 levels of government. That's a pain in the ass and expensive. So, do I regret having pot legalized? Sometimes I do, but once I get a handle on all these legal protocols and I've mastered it, I'll probably feel differently.
Mm-hmm. You talked about fasting before chemotherapy. There's so many things that the public seems to be missing access to as far as health goes. Not too many people know CVDs and heart and strokes kill more, like unbelievable amount of people in North America. And the best thing...
Stroke is the leading cause of death. Stroke and heart disease is number 1. Cancer is number 2. Cancer might have superseded it. I tend to find more people these days getting cancer. Mm-hmm. Although, unfortunately, strokes and heart disease run in my dad died of a stroke, and so did his father and his father. So to some degree, there's a genetic predisposition, obviously, in my family towards it. Though when I got my DNA analyzed on 23andMe, it said I had no markers for stroke or cancer. So that was interesting. It did tell me I didn't like cilantro, which is true. I detest cilantro. To me, it ruins a meal. They can tell you stuff like that.
Cilantro should be banned from
all
all
restaurants. It also told me I don't have freckles. I might look like I have freckles because I'm so sunburned, but I know my nose is all harshed up. Anyway, that was stupid of me. I'm used to being in the sun, mountain climbing and doing all sorts of things, with sunblock and hats.
Are you jamming and this is what I was getting to as far as after the best thing, I don't know about the CBDs and the THCs, but the absolute best thing you can consume after a stroke or a heart attack is essential fatty acids, the industrial hemp oil.
Yeah, well, omega-3s.
Yeah,
you want omega-3s.
Forget the medicine. That's the best thing you can get in you. And I haven't heard the fast before chemo, but it makes sense.
If I was going to recommend someone get omega-3, hemp seeds are a good source, a vegetable source. Halibut and salmon are probably your best bets, though. Mm-hmm. They have incredibly rich amounts of lysine, which is the healing amino acid, and omega-3, which is essential for life for so many reasons. It helps regulate your cannabinoid receptors. So halibut, salmon, cod's not bad for that either. Hemp seeds are rich in omega-3. So yeah, there's lots to be said for just the non-THC, non-psychoactive, non-CBD, just straight oil that's derived from crushing the seeds. The cannabis plant's kind of a miracle plant if you know how to use it.
Mm-hmm. Talk to me about the interactions of the edibles, because a lot of people are experimenting with them now, and I know myself, even when I buy from it's an eyedropper full, I can take it.
Well, an eyedropper that you can buy legally is going to be a lot better than buying an edible, and the reason for that is you can buy like 1,000 milligrams of CBD or 1,000 milligrams of THC in a dropper, and that's 1 gram of pure extracted oil. It diluted in probably olive oil or some kind of oil like that, so you can take it in your mouth. And if you buy an edible, you're limited just per package or per edible to 10 milligrams. So to get 1,000 milligrams or 1 gram of pure oil, you would need to eat 100 candies, 100 brownies, 100 whatever. You're not going to do that. You're going to get diabetes if you eat that for 1,000 milligrams. Even over a week or 2 weeks, you just can't be eating that much sugar. And so the problem is the legal market is at a standstill when it comes to beverages and edible products, because they have capped the THC at 10%. And that's completely impractical. Nobody wants an edible of less than 50 milligrams. Medical people need it 100, 200, 300, 500 milligrams in a cookie. So that is inadequate to deal with the market demand. And so that needs to be changed. So beverages and edibles aren't very good at jurisdiction, but cannabis flower, cannabis extracted oil, pens with oil, droppers with CBD oil, those are great. You can get anything up to 1,000 milligrams, which is not even exceeded in the free market. They don't have the products more than that. So the government regime is good for 3/5 of products and not so good for 2/5 of product. But those regulations will improve, albeit too slowly. But they will. The bureaucracy responds to the market slowly and uncertainly, but it does happen.
I'm more interested in your take on how there must be different interactions with, I don't know, fat in your diet. I know there's probably an alcohol consideration, but for instance, like the first time I got my father some to try out, because he's got, some issues that it should take care of, I took a whole eyedropper full. And I think it was kind of just in the background. I could feel it, but it was just kind of in the background for me.
CBD or full spectrum oil?
Full THC. It had very little CBD.
And you took a whole dropper? Oh, one dropper.
Yeah.
What's the total?
I can't remember what it was. It was 30 milligram bottles. I was buying it from some of the big, whatever.
Sounds like that would be about 300 milligrams of THC. That's a fair bit. I'd be surprised if you could take that without feeling something.
No, well, here's the thing. The first time it was just in the background. The next time I had a beer and a spliff and I greened out. I had to lay down. And then the next time I took it, nothing. So I was like, okay, I don't usually drink on anything I eat.
That's tough to understand. At no point
seems like it's hit and miss with the buzz.
Because getting sick after the alcohol isn't necessarily being high. Greening out just means getting sick. So it means it interacted poorly with how you were. 2 out of 3 of those were no effect, and 1 out of 3 was getting sick. So here's what I would recommend. Why do you want to take it? What's the purpose? What did you want it to achieve?
Well, I've got serious pain issues. I hope it would help with that. And then,
by the way,
for the
let's
mental...
stop there. Let's stop there. What's wrong with Advil for pain for you?
Oh, I take that too.
And does it work?
It knocks it off a little bit. I mean, I've got tons of painkillers.
Because cannabis is only really good for certain kinds of pain.
Okay.
I've always found that Advil and Tylenol are terrific for pain generally. They're miracle drugs in a lot of ways. And cannabis is good for the kind of pain that comes from that you get from multiple sclerosis when you have spasticity disorders. But I haven't noticed it's been good for muscle pain quite that much, or chronic pain. It's good for certain kinds of pain. So I'm not surprised. By the way, you should come and see me in the week. and try some 100 milligram pure cannabis oil capsules, and try those, and try one at night. See if you sleep, and see if you sleep pain-free, and then you'd experiment by taking one during the day, because I'm curious to know how you react. And basically what you got to do is keep experimenting.
Yeah.
Because although there's a lot of anecdotal things, the thing about cannabis as a therapeutic medicine or substance is that each person will have a different reaction, a different response, because we all have different illnesses, pains. Nothing is really quite the same. Like if I have a back pain and you have back pain, it doesn't mean our back pain is caused by the same circumstance, situation, or problem. Yours might be neurological, mine might be muscular, I might have a spinal problem, a disc problem. Oftentimes pain in a certain area, it doesn't originate from that area. It originates from some other place, and the pain is prominent there because there's either a lymph node, a neurologically sensitive area, or a number of things. So again, you're going to need to have an open mind, experiment, and then some things might go wrong. You might green out like you did, but I would never mix alcohol with pot until you've got it thoroughly understood, under control.
Yeah, I've got a buddy of mine give me some gummies that came from one of the stores down here, because the
okay, when you say stores,
do
you mean legal stores? Because no gummy from a legal store is going to do too much to you.
Oh, right.
Whereas flower, extracts, and pens, and oils and drops from a legal store can be very strong. But from the black market is where you would get edibles that are much higher in strength. I'm hoping that gets changed soon for the legal market. But, to me, edibles either do nothing or they're too strong.
Yeah.
I rarely have that perfect moment where
That's
my body,
I
have had it though. So I know what the target is. I know what the goal is. I know what happens when it works. You feel awesome and blissful and totally serene and relaxed. And, but that's only like 20% of the time. Like the other 40%, I don't feel anything in, and 30% I can feel too much and I've got to lie down. So edibles to me are tricky. Yeah. A lot of times the best thing to do is make your own, like make 20 brownies. It's easy to make them all the same dose, and then you can cut them in various sizes and portions. So you have a pretty good idea of how much you're consuming. You'll develop a tolerance to it. If you use it to go to sleep, you can start out at 80 milligrams brownie and go to sleep, and probably in 3 weeks you'll need 200 milligrams.
Wow, really?
Because I found I had to keep raising the dosage every week to see it work.
I remember the first time I tried it, I'm like, oh no, I've been a smoker for years. This is no problem. I had one of my mother's cookies that she had when she was dying of cancer, and I'm like, give me one of those, and I ate it, and for 45 minutes I was spinning on the couch. I'm like, what is this? But I was drinking too, right? So
okay, once you're spinning, you're going to throw up.
Usually,
because the greening out creates dizziness. Once you're dizzy, you're going to throw up. Because when you lose your balance, you get nauseous. I've had it happen. I've greened out 14 times in my life. So when people say you can't overdose on pot, no, you can overdose. You're just not going to die.
Well, you know what, Mark? There's more people
and nothing is going to be in danger. No organs are going to collapse. Like with alcohol. Like alcohol can kill you right now. I mean, when people criticize cigarettes, they say, oh, cigarettes will kill you. Yeah, they will, but they'll kill you in 30, 40 years. Whereas alcohol can kill you this afternoon. If you drink too much and get in a car, just kill your, about 8,000 to 10,000 people die every year of just organ failures from alcohol, sclerosis of the liver, a variety of ailments, and then not to mention the accidents on the road, the accidents on the job. And, alcohol is extremely problematic for bank robberies and a variety of other antisocial behavior. So, alcohol can kill you today and influence you to hurt someone. Whereas tobacco is more benign. That'll kill you. It's probably not going to kill you. You probably won't create criminogenic behavior. You're not going to get violent like you might on alcohol, or personality changes, or schizophrenia, or aggression. So, there's different ways to die and different timetables of death and different ways to die. I would suggest we all try and practice conscious longevity and avoid tobacco and alcohol as much as possible. And of course, I just had a wonderful friend of mine of 25 years just die suddenly. And he had cancer metastasis all across his body. And from the time he first had stroke-like symptoms, he died within 3 weeks after from this cancer that was putting pressure on his brain and what have you. But I love the guy, but he was my age. And, when I started working with him 25 years ago, he put his hand to his forehead and said he gets terrible cluster headaches and, worse than migraines, he said, just terrible. And they don't go away for half an hour to an hour. But I had been watching him, and I'd never seen him eat a vegetable. And he drank Coca-Cola and coffee all day long. And I said, Greg, do you ever drink water? He said, because, headaches are caused by dehydration, and you drink Coca-Cola, you do coffee, you're draining all the water out of your system with diuretics, and you smoke cigarettes, a pack a day, you smoke cannabis, it's all drying you out. Dehydration, drying you out, pissing all your water out. That's why you've got all these headaches. And he said, you're probably right. Never saw him drink water in the next 25 years. Never saw him cut back on cigarettes. Never saw him eat a vegetable. And he continued to drink coffee and Coca-Cola to the day he died. So my good friend Greg, whom I adore and love, was the master of his fate. He died of his own hand. He chose the way he wanted to go. He kept smoking, knowing it was bad for him. He kept eating the wrong foods, knowing it was bad for him. He drank the wrong beverages, knowing it was bad for him. He wasn't particularly surprised when he was struck ill with things, that are exacerbated by bad diets, bad habits, and improper living. He died at age 64. So, I love the guy, but we all have to be conscious. We usually die of our own hand. There are very few things where we can say his life was taken unexpectedly with, against his will, like by a car hit him, someone shot him, he was kidnapped. Those things rarely happen. Mostly we die by our own excesses. Whatever we do stupidly, too much of, uncaringly, that's what's going to kill us. That's true with everything. Most of the bad things that happen to us are our own fault. We are our own worst enemies. And we live in an era where everybody wants to blame everybody else for their problems. So they blame whiteness. They blame males. They blame straight, heterosexual, older men we have some magical power that, exceeds all other natural things. And, people are trying to embrace a cult of victimhood to justify and rationalize why they don't have the success that they want in their life. Same with, the amount of obesity. The best way not to get COVID, along with washing your hands, is to stay healthy. Eat well, sleep well, and cut back on food you don't need and stop junk food. But instead, in the last year, everybody's added 15 pounds on average. They've gotten unhealthier, so they're more vulnerable to COVID because they're bigger. And obesity is the number one comorbidity, although it's generally very obese, grotesquely obese, body mass indexes of 40, 50 pounds more than normal, minimum, to really show some signs of COVID susceptibility. But nonetheless, this would have been a good time for the government, instead of coming down like a dictatorship, to tell everybody, get outside, get vitamin D, get some sun, keep thin, eat good food, eat fresh food, don't be eating crap, don't sit at home and use our free money to buy Lay's potato chips, which might be the worst thing you could possibly have, along with candies and sugars. Diabetes is the number 2 comorbidity after obesity, and they all give you that. So here we are putting on 15 extra pounds, probably carbs, probably sugar, getting ourselves more unhealthy and getting more prone to being vulnerable to COVID, right, as a result of these government lockdowns. And so we have the exact wrong approach. If I was the premier, I would have just said, people, we're going to lose a few, right? If you are vulnerable, please stay at home. Please wash your hands. Please stay 6 feet away from everybody you meet, including your children, your grandchildren. But you can coexist in the same sphere, but they might bring it home. And candidly, we're not going to lock down any places. We're not closing any stores. We're telling people to distance, to wear masks, but we're not making it law. We're not mandatory. We're not going to have a dictatorship. You are responsible for your own health. And therefore, if you're over 85 and you're obese and you're diabetic, then you are very vulnerable, and you should take all the precautions you can, and everybody else just be considerate. And that's it, folks. That's the only thing we're doing as a government. There's no free money. We're not closing anybody down. You're going to have to cope, and you're going to have to look after your family and your friends and do the best thing you can do to keep healthy. And that would be my speech is premiered 5 minutes long, and that would be the only one. There would be no daily updates, of deaths and how many cases and what have you. We'd make vaccines available as fast as possible, and we wouldn't stop travel. We wouldn't stop trade. We wouldn't do anything. That's what a rational, constitutionally rational government would do under the Charter of Rights. This business that you can't travel, that you can't leave your home after 8 o'clock, that you can't meet with your family, these are insane and absurd. and the illegal and unconstitutional and a classic dictatorship kind of authoritarianism. So that's all unacceptable. I'm hoping to run in the next election as a People's Party's candidate here in London.
I was just going to say, what are your political aspirations? Somebody called you a liberal hack the other day because you supported Justin Trudeau. And then I'm like, wait a second.
Once in my life.
Yeah, 2 elections ago, I think that was. See, the last time around, you were a Max guy, too. So I'm glad to hear that, man.
I want to run here in London, Fanshawe. Be a good way to introduce the brand too. I go door to door.
Where's your home, though? Where's your home?
And then they can say, "What do you do, Mr. Emery?" And I say, "I help run Emery Brothers with my brother Cannabis there." So at least everybody I knock on a door or meet, I can tell them about the shop. So you think
that's your best chance to get elected in London?
That's the only good thing you're going to get out of an election because they're very unsatisfying.
Right.
People won't vote for you. They're going to support the dictatorship, right? That's what all 4 parties. It's like a party dictatorship. Yeah. They all agree. Nobody in Parliament is opposing any of these measures. They wouldn't even have done it differently. The NDP and Greens probably would have done it even worse. But you can't beat how badly the Conservatives in Ontario at the provincial level have done. And you'd be hard-pressed to be more of a communist than Trudeau. So, running for the People's Party, I'm going to say basically it's us versus them. The dictatorship versus the People's Party, because we're the only opposition to all this authoritarian dictatorship nonsense that's making life so miserable here in Canada.
Well,
but I don't know. I think that election's actually not coming. If we were going to have a May election, it would have been called now. Whereas they don't really have elections in June, July, and August. So I think you're looking at a fall election. And I think Trudeau would want an election after everybody's vaccinated, everybody. Anyway, that people would probably think they're so grateful to him that, they would vote for the government in October. So we'll see. By then, hopefully, Matt and I are just working away, having a good time, selling cannabis legally and doing our thing. And if an election's called in October, that'll be fine.
Are you open now? Are you open now? When do you?
No, the bureaucracy, we've been ready since September, but we need the Ontario AGCO, which is the Alcohol Gaming Cannabis Office, to give us an authorization date to open. And then at that point, we have some construction that we're waiting for City Hall to give us a permit to, because with the lockdown, these things have been delayed. So I'm hoping we open in May, but I suspect it's going to be June or July. In the meantime, I'm working with friends at a legal cannabis shop in Hamilton. I'm basically an apprentice. I'm learning how the legal industry works, the protocols, the technology, inventory systems, control systems, the regulations, storage systems. There's banking. There's a lot to learn. So I'm learning so that when Matt gets his authorization date from the AGCO, we're ready to get into gear, and hopefully we'd be opening 4 to 6 weeks after that. But yeah, you'll know. You're in St. Catharines.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll come up and see you. What's your product lineup going to look like?
Well, it'll look a lot like what we have at Toke. There's a Toke in St. Catharines, by the way, and I'll probably be working there in the future. They'll probably have me at all the locations. But there's a Toke in St. Catharines. You can even go online too, tokecannabis.ca, and you'll find there's a Toke St. Catharines. And just look at their menu. It changes every Friday. New material arrives Friday, and of course, as we sell it through the week, the websites are changed. And you can get a very good idea of prices. There'll be 150 items on that website. Just the number of pre-rolls. So if you just wanted to buy a joint, a big, huge 1.5 gram pre-roll for $15, or a 1 gram one for $10 approximately, or a 0.5 gram one for about $6 to $8, then there's like 25 different kinds. It's really an extraordinarily good lineup. There's over 600 licensed producers producing cannabis. There's over you could stock 1,000 different products in a legal cannabis store, and you wouldn't quite have everything. So there's an enormous potential inventory for any store. There's an awful lot for the clients to buy. You have to keep competitive, though, because they can always buy it online from the Ontario Cannabis Store. They're the people really making the big money, is the Ontario government monopoly on the distribution of cannabis to retail stores. And that's what keeps our margins tight, because you can't really mark it up too much without going above the government's retail price. And, in the long run, people will not shop at your place if you're, are trying to get too much out of it. So tight margins, to break even at the shop I'm working at now in Hamilton, you need to sell $3,250 a day. That's a lot to sell just to break even, to pay your staff, to pay your inventory, and to cover your rent. I was pretty shocked. I thought people were making bank in this industry, and you got to hustle for that. Now, my brother and I and my one of my sons, we're going to try and do all the work here. We'll work 12-hour days until we get a sense of the volumes, how many people. I mean, if worse comes to worse, I could run this shop myself or run to the front door, check their ID. If there's nobody else here, say, come and look at our sign. I can recommend some things. I'll get it for you, and just tell anybody else to wait at the front door for me once they come in, right? I mean, if you had to, you don't really need more than 1, 2, or 3 people until you got like lots of people. But our anteroom where people come into our store, under COVID, you probably could only put 3 to 4 people there tops. And that's the maximum we'd allow in at 50% of our regular capacity, where you might have 8 to 10 to 12 in the lobby area. So, as these regulations diminish, as COVID diminishes, we can have more people in. But, there will be times, and probably we'll have a lineup outside, just like, I hope we will, just like I did at my free market shop, Cannabis Culture, 5 years ago on Church Street, where we served 2,000 people a day and had a lineup of 25 in the store and up to 25 people outside the store. I was proud because it only took me 14 minutes to complete a lineup of 25 people. So you could get from the back of that lineup to the front within 12 minutes. And we've got to be that quick here. And as people come into the store, they'll look at our screens and hopefully they'll decide what they want, so that when I see them at the counter, they already know what they want. The transaction maybe takes 2 to 5 minutes, between credit cards and debit cards and cash, and putting it in and telling them a spiel and giving them a little bit of advice on consumption. Like hopefully with 2 of us at a counter, we'll go through it pretty quick. But basically, it's not a mom and pop. It's a brother and brother operation. We're not looking to be rich. We're looking to have a little fun. We're looking to be self-sufficient. We're looking to make a little history since we grew up so close nearby. This is my hometown where my legalization campaign started 30 years ago. So, it's nice to come full circle at the latter stages of my life. My brother and I probably got 10 or 20 good years left if all goes well. And it'd be nice to end it here in London, doing the kind of thing that we only visualized or dreamt about 30 years ago.
Well, what's legalization done to the gray market, and how does that affect legal sales? I mean, back in the day, I'm buying stuff at the store. Well, I'm not, but my buddies are buying really quality tasting stuff. I don't know what's in the stuff.
Oh, yeah.
The quality tasting stuff for...
Canada's one of the greatest jurisdictions in the world for high quality cannabis.
They're paying like $130
Ontario
an ounce,
less so. Most of the really great Canadian weed still comes from British Columbia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but at the store, they're
that
charging...
having been said, the free market has incredible stuff, but the legal market has quickly closed in on that, both price-wise and quality-wise. But I will tell you, there's a lot of fabulous pot grown in Canada. But my job, when Matt and I open Emery Brothers here in May or June, we're going to have to steal all our clients from some other entity. In other words, everybody in Canada who wants cannabis is already getting it. So when I open my doors here, I've got to take those customers we're going to get from existing legal shops where people are going to, or the black market dealers. So the street dealer, the illegal dispensary, the legal shop, I've got to see what we can do to take people from those destinations and bring them to us. Hopefully my reputation, my historical contributions to cannabis legalization, and the fact that I'm from London will engender people to drive here and drive by other shops that sell cannabis, just so they can come here and support the people who help make it legal, the people who grew up here, the people who are doing it for the love of cannabis and to make an ordinary, normal living, and not to exploit it by like all these corporations are, who never grew pot, never contributed to legalization, had nothing to do with it. We're all from lumber and mining and sports medicine and nutraceuticals and all this sort of stuff. And because their money was clean, they can get into the cannabis business, but they got no love for it. They have no passion. To them, it's all a financial venture. So hopefully people will come and support Matt and I and my son Jeremy as we work here and help us make a go of it.
Yeah, how do you compete though when the market price seems to be going through the floor? I mean, even black market stuff, the price was always $200 an ounce. Now you can buy it legally at the store for $130.
And everything's come down because the country has a surplus of cannabis. There's so much legal production. There's over 600 legal producers now, and of course, the market demand for cannabis was already met before any of these legal producers came on. For whatever the market wants, the demand is met. So there were already enough black market growers, medical growers, who were selling their surplus to the in the black market, the illegal market, and there was no shortage. There was never a shortage when you were buying. Everybody was buying illegally. So now you take that supply, add it to the legal supply, which is probably the equivalent of 100 to 200 football fields of cannabis being harvested every month. Add that to the supply that was already adequate, and you have a surplus, and you have a glut. So the price in the legal market has come down great. The price on the black market is coming down. Whoa, it's hugely dropped. We've got all these bargains out there. It's going to be hard for people to make money. And half the legal shops that are going to be open by the end of this year will be out of business within 2 to 3 years. If you're paying too much rent, you're too stocked, or your shareholders are expecting more money than is reasonably going to be predicted, people are going to get antsy and they're going to want to liquidate their position and get out. And so we're going to see at the end of this year way too many cannabis shops. London will have 25 to 35 to 40. It's not sustainable.
Wow.
But my brother and I, if we do most of the work and meet people ourselves, we'll develop loyalty with our clients in the neighborhood. We're surrounded by a big residential area. We're on an arterial road. I am quite confident that no matter how much of a glut in the market there will be, my brother and I and my son will be able to carve out enough of a market that we can do okay ourselves, the three of us, and maybe a few helpers. But, this is not a large location, and I like that. It's a very homey, cozy location. We don't need a lot of people. We don't have grand ambitions to have a chain of 50. I can't think of anything more boring, because we'll probably have to have investors and people who will be putting pressure on us to get stuff done their way. And, I know how everybody else who has partners with investors is always under pressure to make more money. And I don't want to do that. I want to have the pressure to make enough to afford to cover my family, to cover my obligations. I have back taxes to pay. I have a fine that I have to finish paying. I've got obligations that I need to work on that can only be done with a job that pays me a reasonable amount. I can't even own the business. I just work for my brother, but hopefully he'll be generous-minded in paying me, because with a criminal record for cannabis, I'm not allowed to own a cannabis store.
Right.
Go figure that. I haven't even been given my manager's license. I applied 9 months ago. It's already over their legal limit of time they have to take before they tell me, because they haven't given it to me because of my extensive criminal record for cannabis. Now, a lot of people I know, including my former partners, Chris, Aaron, Brittany, everybody I know with a criminal record has still gotten their manager's license. I'm the only one that doesn't. Now, worst comes to worst, my brother, he has no criminal record, so he can use money. He can get a manager's license. He can be an owner, and that's great. And I'll work for him. That's fine. I'll do whatever I can to make it work.
Brother, if that's your home riding, man, imagine in a couple election cycles, stranger things have happened. You could be elected to the House, dude. Can you imagine?
I'm an unelectable guy. I routinely get called, and these aren't true accusations.
Oh, I'd love to
but I'm
have Marc Emery
routinely
in
called
the House.
homophobic, transphobic, anti-masker, anti-vaxxer,
That's all.
anti-lockdown.
All you need is one riding to love you, and you're in. Look at Elizabeth May.
I'm anti-woke. All these things, right? Like, I've become so conservative in my old age. I'm so shocked. I totally support Christians and their right to open and go to their churches to worship, even though I'm an atheist. I'm very worried that we've been taking a hard line against Christians and religious people, right? I mean, our Constitution starts out with like, we're one nation under God, right? So the government says we can keep Costco open, but you got to close your church. I don't think that's not obeying the spirit of our Charter of Rights or our Constitution at all, right? Costco gets like primo consideration, but Joe's Diner down the street, or the God forbid the church, or the kids playing on a pond are all illegal. Arrest them all. No, we've got a dictatorship, and it's appalling that it's supported by the majority of Canadians by far.
Dude, I want to keep you on time. Do you sell hemp hydrosol yet? Somebody comments here on Facebook.
Listen, I don't even know what that is. Hydra means water. Sol
Hydrosol,
means
yeah,
sun.
I think it's
So
what's left after they take the THC and the CBDs out of it, maybe in the water. Hamilton has
well,
one
who'd
of the...
want that? What good is that? Like, what would you use that for? And why would you bother? Why not just I don't know. What is it? What is it for?
I don't know. I'll follow up with you. Hamilton has
Okay,
one
we'll
of
do
the-
that in the next show. Maybe we can do one live from the Story when we're open.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Okay, brother.
That'll be so fun.
It's almost 3:50. I promised you I'd keep you on time, so thank you for your
Hey,
time.
thanks, Jimmy. Yeah, I'll
Much
talk
love.
to you soon, man. It's been
And
awesome.
yeah, let's.
It's
connect
Emery
over the
Brothers
weekend.
Cannabis at 725 Hamilton Road in London. We're open to open in May and June. Please come and say hello to my brother and I. Come buy some cannabis. And in the meantime, I'm working at Tote Cannabis in Hamilton at 247 Centennial Parkway in Barton. I'm there Monday to Thursdays. You might see me with the flag because I don't have to wear a mask if I hold the flag outside. But it's not so terrible. I'll also be inside serving customers and learning the ropes and trying to make the best of my time.
All right. Your internet's just starting to cack out, but we got through it. Thank you, brother. I appreciate your time. We'll connect soon.
Hey, all right. Thanks, man. See you,
All right,
Jim.
brother. Cheers. All right. Where do we go? How do I leave this meeting?
Bye, Jim.
Later, brother. I appreciate it. There he goes. He's out. All right. Oh my gosh, this is too big. Too bright. Too big. You're too big, Jim. Thanks to Marc Emery. I guess I just left the room, but I'm still in the Zoom call. Wow. Guy can carry a conversation. Anyways, Tuesday, March 30th, 4 p.m. right here at Mayor Jimmy D. Tuesday, next Tuesday. That's March 30th. Can you believe that? It's going to be April already? 4 p.m. EST right here. The Mayor of Niagara Falls, Jim Diodati. And the next day on the 31st, I got Matea Murda. We're going to talk about her work at the UN and sex-selective abortions. Do you know that, young female unborn babies get killed in Canada because they're female? My body, my choice. If you oppose that, you hate women. Yeah, well, what about killing them? That ain't good. Reynolds, thanks for chirping in, man. I will call you when I get out of here. And, thanks for watching. Share it if you like it. Comment if you don't. Tell me how much you hate me. I'm good with that. YouTube. It's called Trew.Tube or the Jim Fannon Show. Otherwise, I'm Jim Fannon or Jim Fannon Show everywhere else on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Gab, MeWe, Insta, LinkedIn, TikTok, Telegram, Parler, Twitter, Clubhouse, Signal, PayPal, Patreon. All of it will be at Trew.Tube. You'll get some clips, maybe some promo stuff, but the good stuff like this will be at Trew.Tube, and I won't have to need social media or any YouTube streaming process or anything like that. So, all right, I am out of here. Peace, love, hug your neighbor, and for crying out loud, take that fucking mask off your beautiful face.